All right, you're looking for houses in the greater Seattle area, make $120,000 in annual income, and this house pops up in Lynnwood, Washington at $575,000. I'm going to be talking about what it would look like to buy this house. So real quick, let's just look at a few pictures of the house. So it's a really cool looking house, a really cool property. It is a manufactured home, so that impacts things a little bit. I'm just going to keep on clicking through these. You can have a look. But manufactured homes, the pricing, getting financing for manufactured homes looks a little bit different. Even though this is on land, it looks a little bit different than if you are getting a single family. So manufactured homes, a couple things. One is, for the most part, in order to get even sort of reasonable financing, it needs to be built after 1976. So cool property. It needs to be built after 1976. If it's built before then it's going to be very difficult to finance with any sort of traditional financing like this. The other piece is that it's just going to be, it needs to be on land. And so built after 1976 on land, not just a building itself that you're financing. You need to be financing the property with it. There are loans for just the building itself, but they look very different from traditional mortgages. And then it's just usually going to be a little bit more expensive than single family financing, but not drastically different. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at two different quotes. We're going to look at two different quotes for this place. And what I'm doing is I'm using 5% down. And so the question is, you're coming in, you're making this money. How much cash do you need to bring in order to qualify? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just 5% down. What would happen if you came in with 5% down? And basically in both of those scenarios right now, and mortgage rates just kind of popped up a little bit yesterday. But in both of the scenarios that I'm looking at, conventional and FHA, both of these scenarios you're able to qualify. So both of these are 5% down. It's just one is conventional and one is FHA. So let's go ahead and look at these quotes. All right, so here on the left you can see it's FHA. On the right is conventional. And if you're not familiar, FHA is it's a federally backed loan program that makes that often offers a little bit lower interest rates, so you can end up with a lower down payment. However, with FHA, and FHA has some other modifications as well that make it sometimes more accessible for people who can't access a conventional loan. But with FHA, the main difference to be aware of. And so there's we'll come back to these numbers here, but I want to slide to this next page because this shows the fees on the two programs. So this is the FHA fee worksheet. It shows some of the key fees, and these aren't all 100% dialed in to, they're probably relatively close to what you might end up with, but they're not all 100% dialed into what your quote is going to look like. But the reason I'm including this is because I want to highlight this number right here. The $9,559 FHA upfront MI financed. And the deal with this is that fee, it's an upfront fee you have to pay with FHA, but it's rolled into the loan amount. And so when you're going to have to repay that, whether that's, theoretically you keep the loan for all 30 years or you sell the house, you're going to have to repay that $9,000. So when it comes time to repay the loan, you're going to be you're going to be paying that over the course of the loan. You don't always feel it because it's not something you have to cough up front, but that's just something to be aware of, and that's how you result in this. And it's not always that's not a flat number. It's based on the loan amount. I think it's 1.75% of the loan amount. And so that's why you end up with FHA has this lower rate here, 6.75 versus the 6.999 on conventional. Other key features, so obviously the monthly payment then with FHA is $46.23, whereas the monthly payment with conventional is $47.44. So in terms of qualifying, we talked about coming in with $120,000 in cash. Would you be able to qualify for this? So basically the way lenders figure out if you can qualify for a loan, for the most part, and now that I've brought out FHA, I should make this distinction. With conventional, basically your total monthly debt divided by your gross monthly income has to be below 50%. Okay, so total monthly debt divided by your gross monthly income has to be below 50%. Whereas with FHA, they divide front end and back end. So they call this number with FHA your total monthly debt. They call that your back end. Okay, so we'll call that total monthly debt by your gross monthly income has to be, typically they'll let you get up right to, sorry, this is the back end. They'll let you get up to 58%, right about 58%, and so that's one key difference in terms of qualifying. Whereas on the front end, the way they divide it up, on the front end, just your housing payment, so we'll just abbreviate this, monthly housing payment divided by your gross monthly income needs to be less than 48%. So both these numbers have to check out for FHA, but it does give you a little bit more wiggle room if you have other debts and you are coming up close with conventional. So if you have other debts going on and that puts you over 50% with those other debts, that might be a reason to look at FHA there. So in terms of qualifying, if you take $120,000 a year divided by 12 months, it's $10,000 a month. So you're making $10K a month. And both of these you can see are going to check out because they're less than $5,000. It is close with the FHA there, but it's still under the 48%, so that should be fine. So both of these are you're good on qualifying, using the interest rate we're at right now and given 5% down. And so obviously if you can bring more to the table, you're going to have a smaller loan amount. So that's going to mean, if you bring more to the table, you're going to have smaller loan amount, smaller monthly payment. So anything more than that, you're good. I didn't look at 3% down. It would probably be pretty tight with conventional. You can go to 3% down. FHA, you have to 3.5% down is the minimum. So either of those would be pretty tight. But it checks out with these. And then you can see, your total monthly payment is $46.23 on the FHA, whereas it's $47.44. It's lower on the FHA, and you just have to evaluate, is that worth it to you when you know that you're paying that worked-in fee over the long run? So you can see you could qualify with where rates are right now at 5% down with the income that we talked about. Again, it's obviously going to depend on your other debts because it is, while you're under 50% there, it's not a long ways under 50%. So if you have some other debts going on like student loans, car loans, credit card loans, those are going to be worked into this top number here. And you got to make sure that you are good under that number. You still qualify. But as long as you don't have a ton of other debts going on, this scenario looked like you qualify okay. You can see that the cash to close. And here's that number. Other closing costs is $21K over on the FHA, whereas it's $13K on conventional. And that's where that $9,000 comes in. It's not actually going to be a $9,000 that you have to bring. That's actually included in this cash to close that you're going to have to bring to the closing table. But they like to show that on these regulated quotes. These standardized quotes, there's certain features that have to be included, and so that shows up there. $41,879 for estimated cash to close for FHA, whereas it's $43,000. So about $40,000, $43,000 on both scenarios coming in if you're 5% down at this price point. And this other number I'll highlight here in case you're unfamiliar with it is points or credit. Both of these are pretty close to zero. FHA is actually using a little bit of points here. Actually, that's a credit there, and The reason for that is because sometimes lenders incentivize certain rates for various reasons. So they're actually, when I was looking at the rate options, they were actually willing to pay people to take a rate that was lower, slightly lower than one rate that was a little bit higher, because for whatever reason, lenders like to incentivize specific rates. It benefits them, it meets their needs. However, points and credit, basically that's just points as a way to pay a fee up front in order to get a lower rate. And credit is the opposite of that. And both of these have a small credit. FHA has a little bit more there going in. And so that's actually primarily where the difference is coming in here for the total cash to close at the end of the day. If you want to get a look at a real quote on a house you're looking at in the area, we are part of a team licensed in Washington and Idaho. My name is Landon Buteau. I work with Cleveland Street Mortgage. I work closely with my dad, Chris Buteau, who's been a broker for 30 years and just has a ton of experience to bring to any of our clients, and we love working with new clients, so please do reach out. If you want to know what it's like to work with us, check out the link in the description to see there's a video there you can watch to see what it'd be like to work with us.